When I sought for aid, my parents ordered me to go live on the streets after kicking me out of the house before my SAT so my sister could host her friends for her wedding. Hi everyone. I am 17 years old, and I have been studying for the SAT for quite some time. However, because my sister is getting married in 2 weeks, and she had asked her guests to stay at our house, my family decided to throw me out of the house and send me to live with my aunt in the suburbs. They are the worst. Why she couldn't have just requested them to stay in the hotel like the other guests is beyond me. Although it would have cost her money, I believe she shouldn't be so frugal considering it's her wedding. Furthermore, I don't think it would have been a problem for our parents to pay for that as well, because they already cover a lot of expenses. My parents chose to surprise me the night before her friends were scheduled to arrive by telling me that I had to leave my room by the following evening, within 24 hours, without even informing me in advance so I could make some preparations for myself. I attempted to counter that there were nearly 7 of her friends, and that they could all just stay in the living room and the guest room. However, they informed me that having her friends occupy the living room while I have a whole room to myself would be rude. They began lecturing me on how crucial it is to show some hospitality when we have guests here, despite the fact that these are not even my guests, and I was unaware of their arrival until the last minute. I also mentioned that some of them might be able to stay with my sister Melissa and her fiancé Jack, who have their own apartment. My parents, however, informed me that it would not be feasible because they do not want any guests to stay with them, because that would only make the wedding more stressful. In essence, I made every effort to persuade my parents not to force me to leave the house, but they would not have it. I would now have to comply with their request because Melissa had assured her friends that they would be staying with her parents, and they had agreed. To be honest, I had no plans to go and stay with my aunt before to my SATs, so I made a big deal out of it. She is a really strange individual who doesn't trust the internet. Since I didn't want to use up all of my data, her lack of Wi-Fi would have a major impact on my academic performance. My parents informed me that I could only take my books with me, as if that were sufficient, even after I tried to explain that to them. I also didn't want to go live with my aunt this week, because it's in the suburbs, which is a long way from where I'm supposed to take my SATs. I couldn't afford to be late for something like this, and the commute from her place would be too long. My parents informed me that it would be impolite, and that I simply had to leave since they were not prepared to put up with any more fights. I even tried to ask them not to do this and even stated that I would make the sacrifices and stay in the living room myself. My parents warned me not to test them and threatened to toss all of my belongings out on the streets if I didn't go on my own. I haven't told them that I wouldn't want to go and that they couldn't force me to. I was no longer able to debate with them because of that. After a few hours, I had essentially given up and packed my belongings, and my parents expressed their happiness that I had made the correct decision and was contributing to the family. They then instructed me to give my aunt a call and inquire as to whether she would be amenable to my staying until the wedding. It dawned on me then that my parents expected me to do everything, and hadn't even bothered to talk to my aunt about it. They informed me that it was not their duty to look after me because I was almost an adult now and needed to take care of myself when I lost it, and began yelling at them about it. That seemed crazy to me because I was only 17 years old, and even if I had been 18, they would still have had some obligation to me. Because they are my parents. I was furious with them, so I made the decision to begin unpacking and informed my parents that I would not be leaving. Then they began shouting at me and told me that I couldn't do this because they had already promised Melissa that my friends would be treated well and that they would be invited over, so I had to give up my room. I tried to explain to them that having Melissa's friends stay at our house was less important than my SAT, and that, as my parents, they ought to be more understanding of my needs rather than always putting Melissa before me, but they were uninterested. Eventually, even though I knew it would be futile, I called Melissa for assistance. I've never really gotten along with her. And I know that neither she nor I like each other. But I figured that perhaps, just for this one time, she might be willing to talk to our parents and lend me a hand, because I really didn't want to be kicked out of my house with only a few days left before the SAT. However, she told me to put her on speaker when I called her, and told her to take action and talk to our parents. She then told me that she wanted me to hear it clearly, and that she had already promised her friends that they would live with her family, and that she was not breaking that promise. She wanted me out of the house, and if I couldn't find a place to live, I could live on the streets if I wanted to. But she didn't care if I had to study for the SAT or anything else. And in my opinion, that was the most callous thing she has ever done. And the fact that once she hung up, my parents did nothing but watch and wait. I became aware of my lack of significance in this household as a result of that. Furthermore, if I'm being completely honest, I don't even believe they view me as family. For me, that was essentially the last straw. Without saying anything more, I packed my things and headed to a friend's house. Given that I feel like a burden to their family, it was obviously not the best scenario. Even yet, They have been really kind to me and have told me that I'm welcome to stay with them for however long I need to, because they recognize how tough things are for me at the moment. 4 days have passed since my departure from home, and yesterday I finally took the SAT. Fortunately, despite my recent struggles, it went quite well. However, I made the decision to give myself permission to truly reflect on what had transpired when I returned, even though I had been feeling awful about what had happened. Everything had been a haze for me ever since I had gone. I hadn't given it much thought because I needed to concentrate on getting good scores, so I had given that my whole attention. However, now that the SAT was out of the question, I could focus on how my family had treated me, and the more I considered it, the more I felt angry because it was all so unjust. Even if I didn't give up my room, I could always stay in the living room. But for some reason they didn't want me there, so I couldn't see why I couldn't stay in the house, and why I had to leave. It was embarrassing, and I was so angry that I made the decision to contact Melissa's fiancé Jack and tell him everything. I simply felt that he should be aware that this was the type of person he was marrying and the type of family he was joining, even if I didn't intend to ruin things for her specifically. To be honest, I had no clue that this one action would have such drastic consequences. There is only a week left before the wedding, and my parents told me this morning that everyone is going crazy because Jack has reportedly chosen to call off the wedding. And they are aware that I am to blame because they are one of the few individuals who truly understand Jack's motivation for making this choice. He apparently chose to contact Melissa about it and ask her what was going on after I wrote him that message last night. In order to make room for her guests who had flown in for her wedding, she forced her parents to expel me from the house, and she chose to be honest with him about it. Jack, like any sane person, had not been pleased about it either because it seemed completely unnecessary for me to be expelled from the house at such a crucial time in my life, just before the SATs. I had indicated that everyone, including Melissa and my parents, was aware that I had been planning for the past few months. He offered the same solutions that I had previously considered, such as the possibility that I could have simply remained in the living room, that some of her friends could have visited and stayed with them, or that they could all have simply stayed in a hotel. Melissa persisted in offering flimsy justifications for this, until she eventually acknowledged that she simply didn't want me in the house, or even at the wedding. She didn't want me to stay at the house since, although they would be away most of the time, she would be coming over often to see her friends and other people. She didn't want to be with me all the time because she just thought I was incredibly annoying. That was it. She merely found me annoying, which is why she didn't want me around and caused me so much difficulty. To make matters worse, my parents had also supported it. Naturally, she and Jack got into a heated argument when she told him this, with Jack accusing her of being cold-hearted and calling her one of the most self-centered individuals he had ever encountered. He insisted that Melissa make amends and find a way to make things right. He eventually said that he couldn't be with someone like her and called off the wedding when she refused to do that, since she didn't like me and didn't think I deserved it. This only made the argument worse. He had simply left the house last night after the fight, without even getting in touch with her. She hadn't been taking it seriously until this morning, when she thought he would return. However, when he didn't return, not even in the morning, she became irate, and my parents contacted me. They told me that I needed to speak with Jack and make things right because I was the one who caused all of this trouble. Since I gave him the truth, I honestly had no idea what they were expecting me to say. Now, what was I meant to do? Tell him I was simply making it up and that it was all a lie. That's not something I could do. And even if I could, I wouldn't be doing that. I informed my parents, because I felt he had done the right thing and I wasn't responsible for mending her relationship. She should be the one to mend it, not me, as it was her relationship. In addition, she had advised me to go live on the streets if necessary, but since I had already requested for her assistance, I didn't feel the need to assist her at this time. I've always been mistreated by my family. However, since my grandparents live out of state and I don't really know anyone else, I've never had someplace else to go. Additionally, I'm the type of person who finds it incredibly awkward to ask for help, so it was really hard for me to simply show up to my friend's house and ask if I could stay with her. I've never contacted anyone to let them know how poorly my parents and sister had been treating me. Now that I had the guts to do so, I wasn't going to break my word and attempt to mend my connection with Jack. I informed my parents that, in addition to not speaking to him in an attempt to put things right, I would see to it that everyone knew what a horrible person she was and how awful they were, as they deserved it. I informed them that I would write an article about this and share it on social media so that everyone would understand the precise reason for their decision to call off the wedding. Since Melissa and Jack hadn't made any official announcements yet, my parents' attitude toward me abruptly shifted when they began pleading with me not to do it. This was before I took the decision to go out of my way to notify people about this incident. She would undoubtedly try to throw the finger at our parents for informing me that Jack had canceled the wedding following that altercation, They informed me that they were willing to promise me everything I wanted as long as I didn't write about it online, because they were anxious to keep silent. Although I find it pitiful that they are behaving in this way merely to avoid Melissa becoming upset with them, I'm not sure if posting about this occurrence at this time would be appropriate. What would happen if I posted something informing everyone that my sister's fiancé canceled the wedding before she had even spoken out about it? I so made the decision to post nothing. After reading the comments, I came to the realization that I really didn't want to become any more involved in this mess. And that's what would happen if I talked about this online. I didn't want to deal with the fact that I would ultimately be drawn further into it. I really don't want anything to do with my parents or Melissa, so I've decided to ban them now that I'm staying out of it. I have communicated with my paternal grandparents because, despite our infrequent encounters, I have always felt a stronger bond with them. I thought I would start with my family once I had made the decision to talk to them about these issues, since I believe that's the only way I can find a solution. So I told him everything. I told them about everything that had happened in the past as well as what had transpired recently. I don't really want to talk about it, but I've come to the realization that I'm not that significant to my family on numerous occasions in the past. Melissa has always been this way, but she has made it apparent that she cannot stand me. I'd always known that she didn't like me, and the feelings were reciprocal. It was only that the recent events were a little more intense. I also knew that, in the end, my parents would always pick Melissa over me, because she was the family's golden child, the adored daughter, and so on. However, even I wasn't prepared for them to carry it to such extremes of partiality. In summary, my family has always treated me poorly, and has done so thus far. I didn't think anyone was close enough for me to bring it up. Therefore, I never felt comfortable enough to discuss it anyhow. I had always kept silent since I also disliked asking for aid. But after telling Jack about what had happened with Melissa and hearing his response, I made the decision that I should start talking to people about it, because I'm confident that my grandparents and other people would cut their ties with my family if even Jack, who wasn't even related to me, could be a good person and do the same. For this reason, I'm really happy that I finally told my grandparents about this aspect of my life. And they responded just as I had anticipated. Since they reside out of state, I had to talk to them on the phone. After I told them everything, my grandfather informed me that they would be flying in by the end of this week and would take care of me. They didn't share their plans with me. They only informed me that they could never accept the things my parents had done to me up to this point, and the way Melissa had treated me. My grandmother thought that she had failed her son to be a good man, since he would never have treated his own daughter in such a manner if he had been a nice man. This caused her much distress, and she continued apologizing to me. That allayed one of my main worries, which was that I wasn't adopted but rather the biological daughter of my parents. They felt they could afford to push me to the sidelines because of the way they have been treating me thus far, which has always made me wonder if I am truly related to them. I would have had an explanation for the conduct, at the very least. I don't understand why they have always despised me, though, given that I know I'm not even an adopted child. I've never been concerned about why Melissa didn't like me, because I've always assumed that she was just an insecure brat who always wanted attention, which is why she couldn't stand the idea of me, her younger sister, receiving as much attention from others as she does. She therefore made a special effort to make me feel important and insignificant in her own ways, and my parents were always there to support her. If I hadn't told him about what had happened, he wouldn't have known, and they would have been getting married this week, so I'm sure she is furious that Jack has chosen to leave her over a fight that was legally my fault. However, everything is a complete disaster right now, and I'm sure she's holding me responsible. As far as I'm aware, neither she nor Jack have made any formal announcements on their impending marriage. Although I have blocked her, I have not yet blocked Jack. I continue to follow him on social media, so I will be notified if he posts anything. That is the issue to address. I'm just waiting on my grandparents to visit right now, and then perhaps I'll be able to stop getting into my friend's hair. She and her parents have shown me a lot of kindness, and when I informed her that I would be departing by the end of this week once my grandparents arrived, she really looked a bit let down. However, we will both be all right, because I will still be able to see her at school and other events, and she is aware that this had to happen eventually. For the first time in my life, her parents have been wonderful, therefore I will also miss her. I had the impression that I was needed somewhere. It, in its own way, is bittersweet. Hey, update 2. My grandparents arrived here at last. Since they were unsure of how long this would take, they had a lot of work to finish before they could visit, so they had to wait until the end of this week. Many things have occurred in the last few days. 4 days have passed since my last update, which was yesterday. Melissa and Jack announced on social media that they had agreed to put off their wedding for an undetermined period of time. Both of their names appeared at the end of the post. I assumed that they had finally been able to talk about it and had reached that conclusion. The last I heard, they were calling off the wedding, so it's interesting that they indicated they were postponing indefinitely rather than canceling it completely. However, given that Jack and Melissa have been together since middle school and have had an intermittent relationship in the past, I suppose it makes sense because, aside from a few difficult times, they have largely been able to stay together in recent years. I assume that they plan to work things out this time as well, and I'm fine with that. It's healthy for them. I sent Jack a message explaining what had happened, but he never replied. I learned that he had gotten into a heated argument with Melissa about it and threatened to call off the wedding from my parents. However, based on our experiences thus far, I am confident that he is a kind man, and I believe Melissa will make the right choice if she can convince him to stay. In any case, my grandparents paid a visit to my friend's house last night after coming straight from the airport to express their gratitude to her parents and my friend for allowing me to stay with them for so long and for taking such wonderful care of me. I was thrilled to see them, and even more delighted to learn that they intended to tell my other grandparents about what was happening as well, but first they wanted to talk to me about it. I was a little hesitant because I don't really know my maternal grandparents, but I made the decision to go ahead anyway, and now that we finally phoned them last night and told them everything about my family and how they've been treating me for ages, everyone knows. My buddy and her parents were thanked by my grandparents when they arrived yesterday night, and I had already packed. I eventually moved to the motel where they were staying after leaving with them. It's quite wonderful that I have my own room here. However, they contacted my other grandparents yesterday night after we arrived at the hotel and told them everything, and they were equally incensed. Unfortunately, due to my grandma's severe illness, my maternal grandparents are unable to travel to see me at this time. I can see that it wouldn't be wise for her to come over because she can hardly move. However, we nonetheless spoke over the phone and came to the conclusion that it would be best for me to stop going home because my parents had not tried to contact me or even inquire about how I was doing since I had left and banned them. They only got in touch with me once, to shout at me for the mayhem I had caused by sending Jack that message, and then I never heard from them again. Since my grandparents still had a year left until school ended, they thought that I was unwanted there, as it had been made quite obvious to me. If my buddy was willing to keep me here, I could stay with them until I started college. After I finished from high school, I could go in with my paternal grandparents. I thought it was a terrific idea, so this morning my grandparents and I had another conversation with my friend's parents to share this plan. Until high school ended, and my grandparents assured them that they would cover all the costs for all the hassle they had gone through, they were more than happy to accept me back. The parents of my pals were quite kind. That they were wealthy enough on their own and didn't see the need for money, therefore they wouldn't even accept it. However, my grandparents insisted on paying them back for all of their contributions to our family. And although I used to occasionally gripe to her about the way my parents treated me, she would always assure me that she and her parents would be delighted to have me here, and that I could leave at any moment. Which makes me very glad that I got to live with my closest friend. I came to understand that she wasn't merely saying it for the sake of saying it, which is why I consider her a true friend. I believe that very few individuals in the world are fortunate enough to meet friends like her. And she truly meant it. She is currently, quite honestly, on par with my biological sister, and, without a doubt, superior to Melissa. In any case, I'm happy my grandparents came over and took care of me. They will also handle the legal matters, and as I write this, they are contacting my parents. I will keep you all informed of their progress. Update 3. Hello everyone. A few weeks have gone by since my last update and things have changed. For example, I no longer communicate with my parents and now live with a friend. After my grandparents confronted them, they chose to give up their parental rights over me, and as a result, my grandparents currently have primary custody of me. After I graduate from high school, I will move in with them. It's wonderful that none of my grandparents wish to maintain contact with my parents, and they are all righteous for mistreating me throughout the years. Additionally, I no longer have to worry about college because, in the past, I was certain that I would need to work through college or take out a student loan in order to pay for my tuition. However, my grandparents have reassured me that they will cover all of my costs, so I no longer need to worry about anything. To be honest, I made a concerted effort to feel sorry for my parents because they had so easily terminated their parental rights, but all I could feel was relief. There is no need for me to feel depressed about the fact that I no longer have to deal with my family. According to what my grandparents have told me, the rest of the family is also aware of how they have been treating me and how they just handed up their rights over me. I believe that our other relatives will avoid them for the time being at least. Many individuals have messaged me to see how I'm doing, and even if they haven't specifically mentioned the situation, I understand why they messaged me out of the blue, and I truly appreciate it. In addition, Melissa and Jack put off their wedding and formally ended their relationship. Evidently, it wasn't only what I had told Jack ever since she became engaged. She had been acting in a very domineering manner, which Jack had been finding hard to handle anyhow. Thus, my revelation had been the icing on the cake for their already intense arguments. Given how frequently this has happened in the past and how likely it is that they would eventually reconcile if they so choose, I'm not taking their split seriously.